Welcome to There's a Lesson in Here Somewhere. Conversations with interesting people with fascinating stories to tell and from which we can draw important lessons. Here are your hosts, Jamie Serino and Peter Carucci.
Hello and welcome to There's a Lesson in Here Somewhere. I'm Jamie Serino.
And I'm Peter Carucci.
And we're here today with Gregory Mark Hill, a private equity partner and author of the book Samsara and Its Impact on the Entrepreneur's Dreams. Gregory, welcome and thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Jamie. Thank you, Peter. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so we've been speaking with Gregory for quite a while now, actually, and there's all sorts of things we could talk about. But the book Samsara is really something, and there's a lot to dive into there. So we're looking forward to doing that. First, Gregory, why don't you tell us just a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Mainly what I do today is I build companies. And what that means is I consult companies and also have capital to invest in them. My focus is really around growth, whether it's a small startup, a solopreneur, all the way to fast-growing companies into the Fortune 500, and also working with families, both international families and American industrial families that have a lot of capital to put to work, and they want to manage and invest that capital themselves. So today I'm really a consultant and an investor helping founders, owners, and executives expand around growth, whether it's domestically here in the US or internationally.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're forming these really good relationships with these people. And so then It makes sense why then you're thinking about more than just business with them. You're thinking about their lives and so hence Samsara. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the book and what made you think to start writing it?
Sure. So the title of the book, as you shared, is Samsara and Its Impact on the Entrepreneur's Dreams. And Samsara is a 2,000 plus year old Sanskrit word that means suffering, actually cycles of suffering when one is attached to the material world. And I don't mean just cars and houses and Learjets. I'm talking about being attached to your experiences, attached to outcome, attached to the result you want, the financial result you want, attached to the relationships you want. And the funny thing is, when we don't get what we want, when we want, where we want it, as much as we want, we suffer on the inside. And when I was working with a bunch of 40, 50, 60-year-old range executives, founders, C-suites, executives, I found that even when we solve their operating, money raising, build better teams issues, if they were suffering on the inside, like I just shared, because they were attached to the result they wanted, the outcome they wanted, well, emotionally, philosophically, on the inside, if they were suffering, wherever you are, there you are, you brought that with you into the boardroom, into the meeting room, onto the conference calls, into your families, and the businesses I found would ultimately suffer. And so what I found is there was an incredible opportunity here to clear what's in the way, what they didn't even realize what was in the way. And that was the self-cherishing ego, which I'd love to jump into more about on this call together.
Yeah, and I'd like to jump into that too. So it's this idea of, like not splitting this sort of like what people might call work life, or, my work life, my personal life, who I am versus what I do. And you're saying it's just all one big thing, which is great. So I imagine, though, you would get a little pushback, right, when you would bring that up to somebody, especially who is so like goal oriented and maybe numbers oriented, and you start bringing this stuff up about suffering and cycles of suffering. Can you tell us a little bit more about that reaction?
Wow, it's really great that you brought up that question. It's excellent because I had that experience right out of the blocks when I finished my time with the teacher, which we can talk about as well. One thing I'd like to add is, in addition to the 40, 50, 60-year-old range founders, executive, and C-suites executives I work with, I was actually speaking to the Gen Z population, 20-year-olds, right in their senior years in college, and also right out of grad school in their first or second jobs. And after sharing some of the stories that we're going to talk about today, they asked me if I had a book, a guidebook. And that really became the the follow on and the genesis to push me to say, maybe I really should to tap into this. So one of my first experiences with self-cherishing ego and the discussion of, let's say, the spiritual and the business professional work-life balance came up literally right after my 5+ years with a teacher. And it was with a Fortune 1 company at the time. And they had a large issue where they were going overseas to expand, and the global chairman had given a directive to his head of research and development strategy to say, I need you to tell me what we're going to do in these countries that we're going to expand into now. And he'd never been to that part of the world. And he was given a goal to form a task force team and get over there and give him an answer as to whether they should expand in those territories or not. And so along the way, he was given a whisper that this guy named Gregory Mark Hill might have an understanding of what to do in that region of the world. But he was so busy. It was like meeting the president of the United States. I was only given a 37-minute allotment because he was coming in from the airport. He was coming. I had to meet him at an airport hotel. So literally, I had this window, and that was it. Can you imagine?
Very specific.
And so I jumped right into it. I said, who's the task force team? He says, it is the best engineering team you could imagine in the world. I can go to our thousands of engineers and pick anybody I know and everybody I work with. I said, great. I said, so who on the team has been to that region of the world? No one. Who in the team is actually from that region of the world? No one. Okay, well, who's actually speaks the language or who's actually even visited that territory? No one. I said, okay. He says, I've worked with all these people. I've handpicked them. They're really smart, really wonderful. I said, yes, I can understand that. I said, but have you heard of this concept called the self-cherishing ego? I didn't say, do you have self-cherishing this concept? And he said, and he's a very smart guy, educated at the top schools, brand name on the West Coast and the East Coast. You can think of who they are. And he scrunched his face and he folded his arms and he looked over at the gentleman who introduced us, like saying, who did you bring to this meeting?
Yeah.
He was very smart. And he was thinking and thinking and thinking. And then he said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, if you're going to go to the other side of the world and work with super smart folks, who understand the government, who understand the politics, who understand the marketplace, who understand the language, the culture, you're going to really want to know that. Don't you want to have some people on your side of the team or somebody who's been there, done deals there, worked there, understands that? He's like, oh. And he realized in that moment that he was so focused on getting an answer to the global chairman, and he wanted to get it fast, that he was just assembling a team of what he knew how to do versus being strategic and getting the team in place. And ironically, that's self-cherishing ego. You want to just do what you know, as opposed to having the ability to empathize and understand, what do I need? And these are smart folks. And then he said, yeah.
What wound up happening? Did he cave? Did he say yes?
So he literally said, and then he literally said, we're only in 15 minutes into it. And he said, what do you charge? And I said, first class ticket and $100,000. And he said, none. And I wasn't prepared, right? I wasn't prepared. I would later find out that the company was making over $1 billion a day. Yeah. And I should have asked for $1 million.
Sure. The first 37 minutes are free, though.
But I was still young and I was very happy, and it turned out to be an excellent experience. And halfway through, he said, wow, are you a fortune teller? How did you know all this? And I started sharing the stories, and we built up an incredible relationship. And then later on, he would actually share with me, what was in the way. And I was able to begin to learn how to clear the roadblocks out of the way. They didn't need capital, but they needed strategy. And I could see the lessons worked right away, even with a Fortune 1 company. So,
I did some work as well with some in the music sector with some executives who had disconnect between themselves and everyone who implements their ideas. And it sounds like this is like finding the right solution for them to clear the roadblock of their vision first and change their mindset, I think. And I mean, Jamie and I always talk about like it's great when a team communicates from the top down and the bottom up, and it doesn't matter what company it is, right? I mean, do you find that working with these, whether it's that person in particular or any executive, that it opens the door for success amongst all the levels in their company?
it really does. And that's a very keen awareness. It You have like this funnel of opportunity that comes in, and these ideas and possibilities, and people from every level of the company are sharing their perspective and their thoughts and their experiences. And frankly, the ego shows up in, frankly, I know better. I'm right. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I really know better. Even if it's not spoken, that attitude is there. And what happens is that literally those become the roadblocks that get in the way. I was working with a startup company. I had like 33 people in the company at the time generating revenue, and they were all very smart, very talented, technology, hardware, software, networking, and the beginnings of AI. And they're all yelling and screaming at each other. They had a huge opportunity and a huge problem. And they're literally pointing fingers, yelling. And the founder didn't know how to manage all this. And he just said, Gregory, can you get in here and help me? Because there was it was going to double the value of the business. It was that type of deal, an elephant of a deal. So I just came in there and I said to everybody, I said, look, we got some really smart minds around the table. I said, I know everybody's angry and there's a lot of finger pointing going on here, a lot of yelling. I said, let's take all of that and let's table it. We're going to put it over on this table over here. And we're going to get back to it. I want to acknowledge everybody's pain and suffering, but let's just put all that on the table here. Let's use these 18 brilliant minds around the table that we got here, and let's solve the problem. Let's get to it right now. And the founder and the CEO said, thank you, Gregory. I actually feel better for you saying that. And literally 3-4 hours, we got to it. And these brilliant minds around the table, they solved the problem, and we got to it. And we were able to go back and win that deal. So I said, okay, let's go back to the table and let's get to that, yelling, screaming, anger, and all those words. And they're like, no, we're good.
Yeah, they unloaded all that stuff. That's great. So when you talk about attachment, I think also there are like attachments to ideas, and my idea of success or my idea of how things should work, and holding on to that, like similar to what you're saying to, well, I'm probably right. And so can you talk a little bit about that, about when you find that there are these attachments to these sort of preconceived notions, like maybe things that they learned when they were even a kid or going through college or in their 20s or something? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It's very, very important to realize that that specific comment, that question actually applies to all ages, literally from school all the way into college, into grad school, into your careers, even to your grandparents' stage of life. The thing is, problems are always arising. They really do. The challenges of life arise. And what we forget is that they're just a series of experiences, a series of situations. Sooner or later, that problem, that challenge, 2 days, 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, it does get solved. The thing is, when we get attached to it, we want to be right. Right? It's as simple as that. We want to be right. We think we're right. We think we know better. And whether we're in high school, whether it's my daughter who's 9-year-old, who's going through her experience in elementary school, or a grad school, or an athlete, or an executive, people bring in what I call an already always knowing. They already know. They think they know better. And even though it appears they're listening and they're nodding and they're agreeing, inside they already know. Especially with leaders and entrepreneurs of organizations, it's even more paramount. But as at the youthful Gen Z and at the high school and the collegiate level, we think we know, and we have that emotional attachment that we actually know better. And when people are sharing their experience and wisdom, they can't digest it. They can't take it in. And they're already going to do what they already know how to do. And so what happens is, what I share with folks is that challenges, problems that arise, they do get solved sooner or later. The question becomes, who are we being and choose to be when those problems arise? You can go into the positive or the negative. It's binary. Most of us, when problems arise, it's very easy to go into the negative. Get angry, get resentful, be upset, annoyed, distracted, play the victim card. It's very hard to step into a positive view, taking a moment to say, well, what can I get from this experience? What can I get from it? How can I step into the positive and attract ideas, people, possibilities, and opportunities? Because when we step into the negative, we don't realize, it doesn't matter how old we are, how much experience we have, we're literally repelling those same ideas, people, and opportunities. I'm going to give you a simple example, and this is going to be relatable to everybody. There was a sonar beacon that was put on the east coast of America a while ago. And it was literally pinging out. No one could hear it. No human could hear it, but the whales could hear it, right? And the pinging was taking the whales, and rather than them swimming straight up the coast to the mating ground, they would hear the pinging and they'd move out and they would miss the mating ground. Nobody could hear it, but that literal energy was out there repelling the whales, and they missed the mating ground, and the population came down. So very much when we are attached to our experience, when we're attached to our way of thinking, when we think we're right, we don't think that anybody knows, but energetically, we're literally repelling ideas, people, and opportunities away from us because we're attached to what we think is right, want to be right, and we push those possibilities away.
You know, Gregory, well, that's awesome. I love that analogy. Matter of fact, we have an old Chasing Sunday song called Gone, which is about whales.
Yeah.
Well, whales. Well, ironically, sorry.
Wow, love it.
Where have they gone?
Where have they gone? It's bizarre. It's about where have the whales gone, and it's literally you were talking about that. That's pretty crazy.
That's a good song.
Yeah, it's a good song. I am particularly fascinated by the idea that that if you can shift the leader's mindset, everything else falls into play. And in my life, I've either been successful or been part of successes where the strength of leadership really changes an entire environment. I do, however, have friends or acquaintances who are in the business world who don't give a flying hoot. No matter what, they are still going to be right because they're entitled, they're the boss, and guess what? I'm going to be right. Have you encountered situations that have led in your work to put out the book or just in general, where no matter what you do, it doesn't they're still either indignant or they're still just refusing to even engage in that mindset. And to them, they still might wind up at the end of the day with a little more, with the goal they wanted, because the business world can be cutthroat. And I don't care. We're going to make this and we're going to make money off of it. And they're going to do it by hook or by crook. But have you run into situations where some of this mindset has just not either been respected or appreciated? And I'm just so fascinated by what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, you bring up a good point, and I come from the world of capital and the entertainment, celebrity industry. There's a lot of analogies where people who are movers and shakers and deal makers, their ego begins to expand the more successful they are and the more capital that they bring in and the more things that happen. And look, on some level, there is this dynamic where that feeds upon itself. And people like to be around the rainmaker, the deal maker, the successful personality. And then they slowly begin to make allowances. Well, that's okay. Oh, normally I wouldn't do this. Normally I wouldn't do that. And I write about this in my book, but I basically share for people they need to create what I call a system, a leveling system where you have in your mind, let's just say you should be able to quickly write 30 or 40 people around you every day, whether it's the dry cleaner, the cook, the chef, the Uber driver, or your work colleagues, your friends, your family. You should actually be able to take a list and in 5 minutes write the 30 or 40 people around you. And you know what? That's your world. Those 30 or 40 people around you right now, that's your world. Right? We don't think about it that way, but that is your world. That's your universe. In that universe of people that you're speaking to and working with and connecting with, and we are all connected, whether we realize it or not, whether we want to be, we are. And the dynamic around that world is you want to categorize and think about, here's a level of people that I call the board of directors or my cabinet members, people that I look up to, I gain wisdom from, and I take a lot of useful insight. Then I have the next level, which is your partners or your peers, your colleagues. And then below that is your friends. And below that is your acquaintances. And below that are called strangers. And you can label whatever you want. But that's a simple categorization of people. Now, when you think about that group of 30 or 40 people, especially when you're working on deals and projects, some of those names will change as you work on the next project, but you'll still have that consistency. You want to think about two things. What must they do? And especially, what must they never do? And then when you're able to do that, and this is, I don't share this detail in the book, I share for conversations like this. When they do something that's incredible, they maintain that level, but you need to be able to move people up and down that chain, that totem pole. And it's important to do so because if you have a cabinet member that all of a sudden is taking advantage of you, is using their position and stature to take advantage of the financial situation, an operating situation, then are they really a cabinet member? And what happens is when you actually move them up and down, it allows you to evaluate, not emotionally, but literally evaluate where they are. And it puts you in a different perspective of how you're going to work with them, how you're going to be with them. And then also you realize you don't actually get attached to where they are. You see what's happening in real time. Now, to specifically answer the question, but they made all this money. It's not really fair. How come they can behave this way and get away with that, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Because it happens. It happens in real life. There is another Sanskrit word that's called karma. And we've heard this word a lot, but people don't really understand what it means. They said, oh, you've got good parking karma. Every time you get in the car, we find a spot with you in it. That's not really what it's supposed to be about. Karma, literally simplified, means action. Me too, but
Every time. It doesn't matter. It's bizarre.
and so karma.
But you were saying, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. So karma means action, but it really means the action of how are you behaving? How are you being? What are you doing? Are you being a good person? Are you not? When times are challenging, who are you stepping into, being positive or negative? What happens? And the boomerang of energy literally is accelerating faster and faster. And so what you may see is, wow, they got a bigger bonus. Boy, they got a bigger title. But the other thing you may not see is, wow, their family life is a mess. Their friendships, they don't really have any. Their relationships they thought with people are not what they have. And do they have joy and happiness and wonder and that in their life? Maybe not. Maybe not. And so when you step back and look at the larger picture, you can say, yeah, okay, economically, they got a few dollars more than me for now. But the funny thing is, you can't take any of that with you. What you can take with you is the things you love, the memories you create with people you love, the things you love to do, Everything else that you don't love to do, that's a distraction. And you don't get to take that with you anywhere, no matter what you believe. And
Yeah,
that gives you the calm, Peter, Jamie, that we need when we're like, okay, I'm in a good place now.
yeah, and the other thing too there is to encourage people, like another sort of Eastern philosophical tenet, like of Taoism, for example, is to not compare, right? And the minute you start comparing yourself to someone else or something, that's when you start to become disillusioned and heading down a wrong path. Um, so I think between what you said and looking at the big picture, and then maybe even just not comparing yourself to these people, you could find yourself a little bit more so. But it was this kind of leads to a question that I was thinking of is, as you're working with people and imparting this advice, a lot of times these people are very competitive, which means they are comparing, and they are trying to get ahead of maybe other people, and they are driven. And I think they're like, when I've spoken with people like this that were maybe having difficulties, there was this idea of they had a hard time letting that go because then they felt like they couldn't succeed. They wouldn't have any drive if they let that go. Right. But letting that go meant that they could be achieving everything that you're talking about. So what kind of advice do you give people when they're feeling that, like, I want to do that, but I don't want to let this go because then I'm going to fail?
That's a really great question. It comes up a lot. There's 2 points. So the first thing is when you compare yourself to others, you literally go into a self-worth mode, right? I am worth less than. So that's literally self-worth is not about worth. It's about you feeling on a comparative basis, I am worth less than them. So it's important to understand that. And as soon as you go into a comparison mode that you didn't get as much as they did, no matter what it is, a title, a praise, a capital, a bonus, you've actually gone into victim mode. And that is literally the self-cherishing ego rearing its head again, right? You've gone into victim mode. And in that moment, you have fractionally given away your energy to them. Now you've given and fed them literally your power to them. Now, in terms of, I need this and I can't let it go. There's a story. This is literally, do you know how they catch monkeys in the wild? They take a cage and they hang a banana in the center and they put a section of the cage that is just big enough for the monkey to put their hand into the cage. And they grab the banana and they're holding onto it really tight. Now the captors come and they're going to grab the monkey. All the monkey has to do to free himself is let go. Guess what happens to that monkey and the banana? He never lets go of that banana. And he gets caught. Every time. They don't need to have darts and tranquilizers. They just need to have a banana in a cage and the monkey never lets go.
I got caught in the jungle like that one time.
Amazing. So think about it. When you think about that simple analogy, right? When we are holding on to what we think we need to get ahead and this, that, and the other, you're going to become captured.
Perfect. It's really cool.
And it's funny not to get to wax too 80s film, but Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when they finally get to the Holy Grail and Elsa can't, she's going to go down that chasm. She dies going down there. And then Indiana is doing the same thing, going after that goal. And finally he realizes, you know what? His father says, let it go, son. He's like, yeah, you see that battle play out everywhere.
It does. You do.
That's a really great analogy. So the monkey holding on to that banana, that point, the thing you want, the goal you have, holding on to it more in this case leads to your failure, not your success.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's an idea there too of when you were talking earlier about like the guy who had to expand into another market. It's what got you here won't get you there, kind of message also. trying new things, stepping outside of your comfort zone. So I think that's cool too. So I wonder if you want to talk about, in the book, you talk about the plane ride and then finding the monk and I realize that might be kind of long, but I wonder if you want to kind of do a little summary of that, because it's pretty interesting and it sort of leads to how you began to sort of question, like, what are you doing in your life and what has meaning for you?
Yes, it was a pivotal moment. And so the reason I start the book with the plane can't land, right, to just give a little teaser, is because I was actually asked by these, at the start of this conversation, actually asked by these 40, 50, 60-year-old super entrepreneurial, smart executives, C-suite executives, if I had a case study on these experiences I could share with them that was also blending in the spiritual, the work-life balance, for them, because they hadn't really experienced anything like that. It was usually how to be a better salesperson, how to be a better leader, all these typical, wonderful books, but combining those two together. And when I sat down to go through, well, what was the experience? What was the case study? Who was the client that was that aha, eureka moment? And I realized the moment that I experienced that changed everything was this plane ride. Frankly, I told my assistant, I was flying from Silicon Valley to North Carolina to do due diligence at 7 a.m. on a software leverage buyout. And I said, don't put me on any puddle jumpers. I said, I don't care if I have to land and drive 3 hours, I'm going to do that. And next thing I know, we're landing at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's pouring rain. And I look down to our transfer and it's literally a puddle jumper with propeller rings. And I'm like, I don't want to get on that plane. I don't want to get on that plane. And I'm literally looking at the GPS and it says, it's going to take 7 hours to drive there over mountains. I'm like, no sleep. I'm like, this is not going to work. And it's raining so hard like it is now. And there's this scene from Major League where the grounds crew comes out and puts rubber tape around the propellers. Now I'm literally looking down for the grounds crew to come out and put rubber tape around the propellers on this thing. That's how much I didn't want to get on the plane. Anyway, we get on the plane and we fly into a hurricane. Actually, it was downgraded by 5 miles an hour to a tropical storm, but it was like King Kong was holding the tail of the plane and was like this, right? Well, it's like, it was crazy. And what had happened was we missed the runway, right? And that was a first for me, but it wasn't just missing the runway. We went back up in the black of night. It's after midnight, and the captain doesn't get nothing happen, and we're spinning around up there for it seemed like forever. And the guy next to me, literally, who didn't want to talk to me at the beginning of the flight, giant guy, he literally starts melting down and making proclamations of doom. We're not going to make it. We're going to run out of fuel. All the airports are shut down. I mean, he literally, and I said, stop, get a hold of yourself, man. And I said, do you believe in God? Because you better start praying or doing something. Because I silently told myself, and I'm not even a super religious guy, I just said, I better start praying or doing something. It was crazy. And I looked around the plane, and there was 8 of us there, and I said, are these the faces of plane that may go down? And I was conscious enough to say, will go down, because I didn't want to call in any negative energy. So I just looked around again, and I could see it, the fear, the dread, the sadness, the worry. And I'm like, this whoosh goes through my body. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And I just start thinking, did I live a good life? Have I lived? You start going through this process. And I said, what can I do? What can I do? And I'm a take charge kind of guy. I build companies. I do transactions. I help companies grow. And I said, nobody's speaking. We're not getting information. It's been too much time. Maybe we are going to run out of fuel. I mean, we're bouncing around. The rain is hitting, lightning, thunder. I mean, do you think the wings are going to fall off, right? It is crazy. And I said, I'm going to run up there and I'm going to land this plane myself, right? And then I'm like, oh, I don't even know how to fly a plane. And in that moment, you realize, okay, I don't have any control. Whatever control I thought, I don't have it. And I switched my mindset. I said, okay, what can I do to save the people on this plane? And you know what happens? A thought comes in from American Express, and it says, "Dear Mr. Hill, you fly more in 1 year than most people do in a lifetime. You should upgrade to the platinum card." And I'm like, we're being bounced around like a toothpick in the wind. And I'm thinking about American Express. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, what's up with this? And then finally, I said, okay, I get it. I live a high energy, high wattage life. I do fly a lot. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give up the energy of a year of my life. And please use it. And I'm speaking to like God and the universe and everything out there. I say, please use the energy from a year of my life to bathe and protect this plane so these people can land. That's the only thing I can think of. That's it. And in that moment, my body starts to shake up and down, and this white light energy boom, comes out of my heart, just pouring out. I kid you not, it's just pouring out of my back. I don't even know what's going on. And I could see all the white clouds out there, the thunder. The energy is pouring out of my heart, goes through the wing, through the plane, through the windows, connects to the clouds. And I'm just going with it because we're being bounced around. I'm like, okay, and I look at it and I said, okay, please use that energy to wrap and bathe this plane like a cotton ball and just around and around and around until the cotton ball around the plane literally visually just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And literally the captain then comes on, these two junior captains like, okay, everybody, buckle your seatbelts. We're going to try again. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's scared. We're going to try again. Like there's no confidence, And I'm like, oh my God, we're coming around and we're bouncing around. And we're trying to land, and it's like runway, water, grass. And it just seems like there's a river. I'm thinking we need pontoons. We're bouncing around. We cannot break the barrier. Too much wind, too much rain. And finally, boom, we hit. The wheel wells burst in a spark of flame. I thought, oh my God, it's over. And then there's so much rain and water, it douses it all out. And we bounce around, and stop. Finally, we make it, right? The wheels don't shear off. We don't turn a torpedo. We don't blow up the North Carolina airport. Get off the plane, deplane. By the way, there's no clapping. There's no thank you for flying American Eagle, nothing. Everybody shocked. The captain is the one who pulls out the luggage and he gives it to me, this young guy. And he's like, he wants to cry. And I grab it. I just look at him. I put it over the satchel over my arm. I head towards the North Carolina airport. I look back and I say, well, I guess however long we're supposed to live, it's 1 year less now. But the key to that is that I realize we always think we're in control about everything, and we're really not. And it takes a level of awareness and sometimes an experience like I just had where we realize, we can barely control when we go to bed, what we eat, when we sleep. We think we do, but we're not. And so that's being attached to every moment, every experience, every outcome, everything we want. We don't even realize that we're attached all the time. And when you're able to step back into that and let that go, then some amazing things happen for you.
Yeah, it's a cool story. It's really powerful. So the idea of samsara, then, can you tell us a little bit about how that plays out in a person's life? So these cycles, how would you recognize them?
Yeah.
Could you how would you stop them? Or, how does a person put samsara into the context of their life?
So samsara, as I mentioned, is cycles of suffering, and we're attached to it, and we choose. You choose suffering. We have experiences. We go into our self-cherishing ego, and we get attached to the illusions that are out there: money, fame, power, all of these natural things. These dreams that we think we have, and that we get attached to those outcomes. And when we don't get them, very simply, as they're sharing in the beginning, when we don't get what we want, when we want, where we want, we suffer. And we actually choose that, and we don't even realize that we're choosing it. So I realized I had this moment. I was driving to work, and had a very important meeting. I was really excited about it. It was going to be a big fee opportunity, and of course, I'm running a little bit late. Right, when you don't need a meeting, when it doesn't matter, you're there early. But of course, I'm running a little bit late, and I'm on the FDR, about to turn off the exit, and this white truck comes, and cuts me off. Right, and I'm like, whoa. I actually had been doing some breath work and some mantras and in that moment I had this literally this epiphany. It's like, wow, the first thing I wanted to do was honk the horn, lay on the horn. I'm nervous. I wanted to yell a few colorful words and maybe a couple of hand gestures as well. And I thought, oh my God, there's 3 categories of people in this moment. I had like this download. And the first thing is the first part of us, we see that happen. We get cut off by a white truck and we want to lay on the horn, scream, some hand gestures. There's a second group of us that, well, we're not yelling or honking the horn or screaming, but we're internalizing it. And we're saying, bad driver, unsafe. I'm a good driver, but he's a bad driver, right?
Yeah.
And then we go to the office and we tell, I just got cut off by this guy in the white truck. And we tell everybody what just happened. And I call that celebrating the problem. Now you're sharing that with everybody. And then there's a third group of us, maybe a smaller group, that we're having such a good day. We're like, go ahead. You need to get there faster than I. Or if we knew that they were trying to get there because their wife's having a baby or their grandma's sick, maybe we'd say, oh, go ahead. Not all of us, but most of us say, go ahead. So I'd say, but most of us are in that category 1 and 2, right? We want to lay on the horn. We want to say something. The moment you do that, 2 things happen. And the first thing is, you're literally going into victim mode again, right? The guy can't even hear you if you're yelling or honking. He doesn't even care. He's oblivious. The second thing that happens in that moment, you've literally given away your power to a complete stranger in that moment. And what happens is we are having those types of experiences. The white truck is literally a white truck, but it also shows up in the form of an email blast, somebody yelling at us. The other guy got promoted. The other guy got a bigger bonus. All these things happen. That white truck is showing up all the time in different forms. And in those moments, we are either stepping into our power or we're giving it away. And when you give it away, which is the tendency that most of us have, is at the end of the day, we come home and we're tired, as if we've been lifting 50-pound boulders all day long. And the reason is because fractionally, we have these experiences. We become attached to the outcome of what we want, what we think we want, and we give away our power and we're exhausted. You are exhausted, mentally exhausted. And the thing is, I'm here to share with you that when you read my book, and I share with you through story after story, the answer to this, you can go to work out, you can have a yoga practice, breath work, you can go to temple, ashram, church, it doesn't matter. All those things are great. But I'm here to share with you, you can do something very simple, which takes a lot less mental and emotional time and energy. You can literally walk in your backyard, walk in your apartment, walk around the block, and take a moment to reflect on the intention of, okay, here's an experience. Here's a challenge. Who do I want to be? Who am I being? All the problems do get solved. Eventually, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months. If all the problems eventually get solved, I'm free. I actually don't have to be angry and upset and annoyed or go into victim mode. Oh my God, I didn't even realize I'm free. And in that moment, you've actually stepped into your power.
I actually had that experience driving home today.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. Where I was, if you recall, by the way, as we're filming this, is like a tumultuous, horrible downpour.
Yes.
But I was in the middle of a flood on the Sawmill River Parkway. And I mean, it was flooded and people are going crazy. And I made the conscious decision after my first reaction was to be the first of that group, cursing. And then I had to say to myself, wait a minute, I'm on my way home. I'm all chill. There's nothing for me to give my power over to in that situation. And Gregory, you said something interesting before. You said we don't know if they're rushing because they're getting, what if someone's giving birth? Like you don't know what the other, in this case, is going through, and whether that opens that up for us to have a door to compassion, that's one thing. But really, it's understanding, because we're all in this together. And it's like, if that person's rushing because they're about to have a baby, okay, great. Or maybe they're rushing because they're just rushing and they're crazy and they're just rushing anyway. It doesn't really matter. It's how I choose, or the person in that car chooses to respond.
Yes. That's very enlightened of you. See, the thing is, in that moment, you get to choose who you want to be. You get to choose that. And in that moment, when you have not given away your power fractionally, when you've actually stepped into your power. And what happens in that moment, your entire perspective of yourself, the world around you, it changes. And in fact, in that moment, you've become a magnet, attracting more ideas, people, possibilities, opportunities into your life, health and wellness, no accidents, rather than repelling all that away from you. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I kind of like what you're saying there again about like your sense of self, because like Peter in your story there, and then and also Gregory in yours, the initial thing that people think is that that person is out to harm me, right? And so, like you're saying, you're playing the victim, and there is a safety thing there. So yeah, like your body's going to probably react, the fight or flight or freeze thing, and it's natural to have that reaction. But like, I always think of I don't know if you remember De La Vega, and he would write these little sayings in chalk in downtown Manhattan.
Yes.
There was one that said, "Maybe the world is conspiring in your favor." Right? And it challenges that notion: the world is conspiring against me. Maybe it's conspiring in your favor. And when you think about like cognitive behavior therapy, it helps you to challenge these preconceived notions and these frameworks that people kind of tend to have, which tends to skew towards negative, because they tend to happen when maybe a minor trauma is happening to you. So then you process it in a way of like, someone's going to harm me. Or like even write down to an email that email is nasty, but maybe if you read it again in a different frame of mind, maybe it's not. Maybe that person is not out to harm you. So I can appreciate what you're saying there. I think it ties to some psychological theory there too.
And I like the idea of this problem is going to work itself out no matter what anyway. So if you all of a sudden are just aligned with that, what is stressing me out right now means absolutely nothing. So my
Yes.
response to it in a negative way can be horrific, make it 10 times worse. Once I was driving on the FDR and a big SUV cut me off, and I was trying to get off, and I'm going to a show and I have all this equipment in the car, and it's a sunny day, and I was like, I'm not going to let this bother me. And the woman rolls down her window, and I roll down my window. I go, "Is everything okay, ma'am?" She's cursing and screaming at me. "Everything okay, ma'am?" She's trying to cut in front of me. And I go, "Are you all right?" She goes, "No, MF." I was like, oh my God. And she threw, this literally happened 2 weeks ago in, Manhattan. She threw a donut wrapped in cellophane, like a prepackaged donut.
So you're able to eat it.
Car, as if to attack me. Now, go ahead, man. And then so the whole fruit of this argument is that, like, at the end of my show, sitting there, and my guitarist and I are sitting there, I say, "You hungry?" He goes, "Yeah, give me that." So he's eating this donut that this woman's anger launched at me. That was prepackaged, by the way. And it's when you really let go, you kind of, I have been on that same exit, and I have not acted. I've been worse road number one than anything. So.
Well, you got to experience the sweetness of light there.
Yeah, you got quite a reward for that.
I couldn't understand. I was like, "Is everything okay, ma'am? How are you?" "I don't know." It's like, oh. I was just grateful it wasn't a brick,
Yeah, seriously. Oi.
Man.
So Gregory, you do a lot of work with leaders and entrepreneurs and helping them to realize this. Do you have any advice for someone maybe who's like in the middle, or you said you have worked with younger people. They're just starting their career. They're in the middle, and maybe they're realizing, like some of the things about themselves, but maybe they're in a bit of a toxic environment too. Like I appreciated what you were saying earlier about, not giving your power to someone else, that board member, um, knowing who you are so that you don't get taken advantage of. But, you sometimes hear about like, toxicity in the workplace. Maybe it's an overused term, but, I wonder if you have any advice for someone in terms of like samsara, but being kind of maybe more in the middle of an organization.
Yes, well, in fact, my book is it's 5 chapters long. And I should say to people, if you can read really fast, you can read 1 chapter a night, and in 5 days, you can read the book. If you're a slower reader, you can read 1 chapter a week, and in 5 weeks, you can read the book. Whether you're a slower reader or a faster reader, 5 weeks or 5 days, it'll change your life. And I believe that in my heart, because for people, whether you're a founder, managing director, partner, CEO, all the way to the mid-level worker, but really all the way down to the assistants and even the interns making photocopies, what I found is that everybody seems to have a practice: legal practice, consulting practice, medical practice, healthcare practice, gym practice, but very few people have a personal practice of their own. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking just about like breath work, and I'm talking about a personal practice where you reflect, like I was sharing, on the moments of the day, the experiences you had, and you think about, who do I want to be? What are my intentions? And in those moments that I've had today, have I stepped into the positive or I stepped into the negative? And when you go through that exercise with intention, right, then that personal practice is yours. And then that actually becomes a spiritual practice, right? And when you have a personal spiritual practice, I call it, of your own, that is literally what fills you up and gives you the energy that is being fractionally given away by yourself, or being taken away by, I'll call them energy vampires, people that think they can take advantage of you, which is out there. It's true. But when people have a personal practice of their own, when they're actually taking a few minutes during that walk around their apartment or walk around the block, or taking their shoes off and walking the grass outside and reflecting with intention, who is it that I want to be? Who am I being in that moment when times are tough? It's great to be nice when everything's going well. It's harder to be nice when things are not going so well. It's easy to be angry or distracted or apathetic. It's not so easy to be who we want to be: magnetic, kind, compassionate, loving, happy when times are challenging. But when you have a personal practice of your own, and I call that when you actually do a meditation, you actually think about it. When you do that, you're actually meditating. That is meditation. Meditation isn't about sitting on a pillow and doing ohms for an hour. I mean, that is, but that you don't have to take that much time and mental and emotional energy. You can literally take a moment, which most people don't do, before you get home and stomp your feet at the door. Stomp your feet at the door just before you walk in. And what that does is it literally shakes off the energy, that bad juju you took in, that debris that you took in, and it also grounds yourself before you step in to meet your friends, your family, and literally connects you back to the present and the presence of who you are. So when you literally just stomp your feet 3, 4, 5 times before you walk in the door, wow, you're back to the present, you're awake. And that applies to everybody, whether you're an intern making photocopies, whether you're in secretarial service support, whether you're a mid-level worker. When you have a practice of your own, and I'm literally saying 3 minutes every day, before you go to bed, before you when you wake up, before you walk into your home. When you do that every day, it becomes your personal, what I call spiritual practice. And that literally, I promise you, it changes your life.
It's great. I love that personal practice.
Thank you.
So, Pete, do you want to tell us about your hat?
Well, just that this was my son's travel team growing up. I was one of the coaches, and pretty much every episode now, I've decided I'm going to wear a hat that has some meaning. And what I
Nice.
love is that when we were talking earlier, somehow randomly, Gregory, you were basically like who I want to grow up to be as a baseball player, right? You played in the farm system or whatever, and all this stuff, and so it's
Yes.
just uncanny that there's a coincidence there. And that I used to wear this hat right here in your hometown, and my favorite restaurant there.
Wow.
Crazy.
Well, I don't believe in coincidences, by the way. I believe everything is aligned. I believe we are all connected, whether we realize it or not, whether we want to be or not. Yes.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You guys definitely had a connection. You chose the right hat and the right water. So that's great. I was just going to ask, Gregory, is there anything that we didn't ask or anything else that you want to share as we wrap up?
Yes, I think we covered a lot, and this is a great conversation. I'd love to have another chat with you as well. I think the most important thing that I really think about is, and I talk about this from time to time, is the analogy of the lotus flower. And whether you're an athlete, whether you're just beginning your career out of school, whether you're in the mid-level trying to get to the next level, whether you're a senior leader in the organization, C-suite, founder, owner of the business, there are a lot of challenges we go through, a lot of struggles that we face. Injuries as an athlete, challenges, in the workplace. Sometimes it's hostile, sometimes it's not. Our own personal emotions we bring into our daily family, our daily lives, is much like a lotus flower, which sits beautiful, pristine, clean on top of this dirty water and the dirty mud. But in fact, what's interesting is the lotus flower, which grows beautiful and clean, needs that hydration from that dirty water, needs the minerals and nutrients from that mud to grow into the beautiful flower that it is, sitting atop all that dirty water and dirty mud. Much like we in our daily lives, whether we're young, whether in our middle of our careers, or their senior levels, we need those challenges and struggles. We need the samsara and suffering to go through and experience from it to be able to grow into that beautiful lotus flower at the end of the day. That's what I'd like to share with people.
That's a great thought to end on. Thank you for that. That's great. It's been a great conversation, and I definitely feel like we could talk for hours. So we'll have to do this again sometime for sure. I'm going to continue reading the book. I just started it. So everybody, Samsara and Its Impact on the Entrepreneur's Dreams. Check it out. Amazon. And Gregory, there was another website where you could get it.
There's multiple websites, but obviously Amazon, it's now in England, Singapore, UAE, Australia, Canada. It's in Indigo in Canada as well. And so there's a publisher called BookBaby. You can buy it directly on BookBaby as well. Especially if you want to buy, and some are 100 or 500 copies. We have a few folks buying 1,000 now. You can get it directly from the publisher. So, but Amazon is fairly ubiquitous. Again, it's been great here, Jamie, Peter. It's wonderful to share with you. Thanks for the great questions and the opportunity to share with your audience. Love it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And thanks everybody for watching and listening. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye now.